We stand for the true and north, the cities and skylines, the strong and free. For those who value the story and source, the opinion and fact, the context and clarity, to help illuminate the path and potential, the drive and direction. We are the one and only, the Globe and Mail. What shapes your world?
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the webcast. I'm April Fong, Senior Editor with Report on Business at the Globe and Mail. I'm thrilled to be your host and moderator today. Before we begin, I would like to acknowledge that the Globe and Mail's headquarters is situated on the traditional territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples. We are grateful for the opportunity to live and work on this land. And on behalf of the Globe and Mail, I would like to recognize IBM for making today's event possible. AI has transformed software development, helping more code get written faster. It's morphed the role of traditional developers where they're needed more for validation, maintenance, and managing AI systems. Over the next hour, we will talk about some of the challenges developers are encountering with AI, along with solutions and strategies. We'd also love to know what you want to learn from this event. So toward the end of the discussion, we'll have time for a few audience questions. You can let us know what you want to ask our panelists using the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. If you're having technical problems, I probably can't help you, even though I'm a tech editor, but please click the help desk icon on the lower left of your screen and help will be on its way. And now it's my absolute pleasure to introduce our speakers. First, we have Alexandre Lanoux, Vice President of Business Reimagineering with SIA Innovations. His company designs and operates enterprise AI systems, hybrid data integration, and secure cloud infrastructures. Welcome, Alex. Kristen Milkanowski, Chief AI and Quantum Officer with BMO Financial Group, was scheduled to speak today, but she had something urgent pop up at the last minute. And so taking her place today is EJ Edward Ackner, Vice President, Head of Applied Artificial Intelligence at BMO Financial Group. Thank you kindly for jumping in, EJ.
No problem.
And finally, I'm delighted to introduce Hassan Jaffrey, Digital and AI Transformation Leader. Hassan is an experienced Chief Technology Officer and most recently was Vice President of Engineering Digital Business Solutions with TELUS. Welcome, Alex, EJ, and Hassan, and thanks for joining us today. Shall we jump right in?
Yep, that's good.
Okay, well, I thought we would begin this webcast by assessing the challenge that developers are facing. When it comes to AI-assisted software development, what do you think has changed in the past 12 to 18 months, and where are organizations seeing real gains or disappointments? Hassan, let's start with you.
Well, let me first start by saying that AI is not a tools discussion. It's not something that an enterprise should install. It's to take real advantage of it. It requires an operating model change. Speed applied to a fragmented architecture, delivery model, operations model. All it does is it just enhances the fragmentation. So, just adding co-pilots, agents, and processes built for human interpretation, manual coordination, late stage governance makes the enterprise faster at producing the wrong outcomes. So the real enterprises that are taking advantage of it and moving forward in the best way possible, organizations that capture value by redesigning how technology and workflow happens. So ensuring that there's good flow in the process and adding the guardrails and the controls required to ensure that agentic is being done safely and securely. And that requires changes to not, the entire process model from enterprise architecture to building, software development, enhancing it to ADLC and turning it into an agentic software factory. And then taking operations and making it intelligent operations where you can really take advantage of agentic and have a better control mechanism, because by the time operations finds a problem in an agent or something, it could do a huge damage compared to what what we lived in the past. So those are major changes that I think are critical for organizations to really reevaluate how they're approaching software development by redesigning their processes to get the most value out of agentic.
That's a great way to open up the conversation. Alex, what about you? What do you think has changed in the past 12 to 18 months? What are your clients seeing in terms of real gains in AI software development, or what's been disappointing?
I mean, I will call it, for me, the biggest change is around the human aspect, where AI and all these agents is capable of the best. It's all, I mean, as Hassan said, it's also capable of the worst. But what it does is it amplifies who you are. So if you are, as a developer, if you are like very strong, you will be stronger, you will be faster. But if you're weak, it's just going to magnify your weakness. And that basically brings that you can basically succeed or fail at a much faster pace. And so from a software development perspective or from an AI development perspective, it makes the organization more vulnerable because the testing has changed the way we are, and it's all going around the trust. People need to, I mean, they used to trust, if you take the banking system, because we have someone from BMO today, when I withdraw $20 from my bank account, I want to make sure $20 being withdrawn. But if the agent is starting hallucinating or stuff like that, I'm not sure what the end result is going to be. So it changes a lot because now all of a sudden computer can start taking by himself. And not that it can take necessarily the final decision, but it's important that we reevaluate, as Hassan said, processes, so we bring human in the loop and we don't simply automate what is already there, because it requires a significant change in the way you do business. So that's what I will say would change by a lot, and it's changing faster and faster.
Yeah, those are some big changes that you've highlighted there. EJ, how about you from your perspective at BMO? What have been the biggest changes in the past 12 to 18 months, and where is BMO seeing real gains or disappointments with AI software development?
Sure. So first of all, I want to completely echo both what Hassan and Alexander both said. And while I think Alexander would not mind if our ATM machine hallucinated a $40 withdrawal against his $20 request, I think he would also agree that's not in the necessarily the best interest, from a customer experience perspective and scale. Jokes aside, I think there's a few big thematics that are playing out here that we need to kind of keep in mind. Number one, I believe personally that the reported demise of the software engineer is not only overplayed, but I think doesn't speak to the absolute necessity of expert, skilled individuals who adapt and adopt to the next generation of tooling. The craft, the art, the science of software engineering, particularly in enterprise, is going to be a skill set both today, tomorrow, and well into the future. So that's number one. Number two, software development, solutions for speed, trust, and security are not done in a vacuum. They are done in the context of outcomes, value, business realization, customers, products, etc. And I think, and again, building upon a bit of what Hassan was saying, okay, we have to think of the next generation of AI SDLC as an extension, an enabler to deliver those outcomes, those benefits faster. Hyper agile AI SDLC rocket fuel for the sake of code doesn't necessarily lead to an outcome. All of those other things absolutely must be in place. So the necessary investment, as we say in BMO, the tokenomics, the ROI, the expected outcomes for the business are all there too. Finally, let's speak in terms of specifics in terms of outcomes. Publicly, I think it's fair to say that if you look at the benchmarks that are there for a range of SDLC tooling enhanced by AI, at minimum, you should expect for certain tasks approximately a 30% increase in productivity. However, having a 30% uplift in a given set of tasks isn't an end-to-end life cycle. It isn't end-to-end delivery. So you really need to take a step back and not just necessarily and only think about the task per se, but how it fits into your broader delivery ecosystem end to end. And I think that's where there's candidly a lot of confusion in terms of the software offerings, the capabilities that are out there. Many of them do a great job independently, but you have to think about how they all fuse together into an end-to-end life cycle. And then you really need to do the hard work in terms of benchmarking and evaluations to ensure that they're fit for purpose in terms of safety, performance, and overall optimization of cost, latency, and all those other requirements. So ultimately, you're delivering upon the promise and the expectation of that investment, change management, and that next generation of tooling. That's really the key to unlocking the holistic value here over a strategic period of time.
Thank you so much, EJ. That there's a lot of reasons for optimism in some of the comments you made there, especially about the demise of the software developer not being true. I want to turn our conversation next to building trust and governance in AI software development. EJ, you've been an AI leader in the highly regulated financial services industry, and your team's approach to governance is that it can be used as an accelerator rather than a restraint in scaling AI. Can you tell us about that?
Yes, I believe very strongly that AI, when done well with the appropriate product market fit, for enterprise and regulated industries, absolutely positively can enable and accelerate measurable, tangible outcomes. Now, in order to do that, that presupposes you are doing things in production at scale and not purely in some innovation loop and pilot POC loop that doesn't go anywhere. And in order to bridge that gap in terms of getting from sandboxes doing interesting things to scale, doing valuable things, part of that is ensuring that you've got the necessary risk and control frameworks and environment. And that has to do not only with, but a large part of that is observability. I've referenced, previously both benchmarks and evaluations that are fit for purpose. It's not just safety, but safety is a key component of that. Think of it this way in human terms. If you're going to hire a human to do a particular job or task, you need to make sure that number one, they're skilled, that they're aligned with your values and ultimately follow the letter of the regulation, law, and risk, and that you're paying market price for them, right? There's no difference here in terms of your tooling. The difference, obviously, though, is from an observability perspective, your combinations of models, tools, and data, which ultimately are the ingredients of your agents or your agentic infrastructure, need to be measured and monitored in a way that you can ensure those outcomes are realized. And that's not done through guesswork. That's done through real-time continuous monitoring, telemetry, broadly speaking, observability. And when you're able to do that in the context of your tasks and the risks associated with them, you can unlock immense value, but it takes a lot of work in order to get there and product market fit at scale.
Can you give us an example of what the guardrails have looked like in practice for your software teams?
I'll speak about it at a high level because candidly, that's, I think, fair to say, very sensitive intellectual property. Cracking the code of evals that achieve scale, production, regulatory product market fit, internal risk. That's a very hard thing to do in a regulated industry. But I'll speak about the thematics. And when you're talking about that in the context of that Venn diagram of safety, performance, and system, you're looking at a range of different evaluation standards. You're looking at a range of different task level criteria. you're looking at a certain number of those whereby they are of such high risk, you need to put in place control frameworks and observability capabilities for real-time monitoring. Think of something that's customer facing. If you're also now just in the domain of AI, SDLC, and software development, if you want to release things within your life cycle on a daily, multi-day basis, or even on a weekly basis, you need to be able to kind of measure that across a range of environments, particularly when it comes to agents. And of course, in your customer facing, you may have to do all of that not just in English, but in multiple languages such as French as well. So, all of this goes to the range of tooling, the range of eval standards and frameworks, and this very complex dynamic blend of requirements that basically are the underpin your responsible AI, your enterprise risk, your SDLC, and your business acceptance in terms of what is deemed to be, an end-to-end, kind of delivery. And when you're adding AI into that, that's basically rocket fuel on top of all of that, so that you really need to have, extremely sophisticated observability capabilities that allow for you to do that in production.
Okay, so you have to watch out for that rocket fuel. Alexandra, when organizations are using AI-generated code, how should they validate and test it? How do you determine who's managing the accountability of it?
The accountability, for the way I look at it, is AI is not simply a tool that we use. AI is, when you switch to agentic, AI is actually part of the team. So when people are using software or they're using processes with agentic, they need to say, like EG said, that you need to have the governance and RS, like if it was a normal employee. It's just that the employee is capable of doing it faster, and you need to train him and have the proper skill. When I look at the way to build trust around that, for me, it goes into concept. Number one, there is, when we go from a software development perspective, there is, I'll call it the left shift that needs to happen. Because the AI today, even with the most sophisticated one, is capable of knowing how to do things much better than any specialist on the market, but does not necessarily know what to do and why it needs to be done. So when you're designing and you're applying this technology, the left shift means it needs to start from the design, and then when we architect the tool, to make sure that the security boundaries and the context is properly given, so the AI has the right information to take the right decision from that context. The second point regarding the trust, and I will echo what AG was saying regarding observability, I will push it one step further. When you're going in production, make sure you have trust. You need to go with real-time observability also, which is basically coming out with a whole aspect of data and connectivity and all the rest. But from a business perspective, it's called, what was right 2 minutes ago is not necessarily right, because something could have happened in the middle that will change the behavior. And the same way a human will know, you need to make sure that your AI is aware so it can be trusted. And without that context, without these guide rails being put in place properly, this is where you will amplify what I was saying at the beginning. Without the context, you may magnify the strong point, but you will also magnify the weaknesses of your processes.
Hassan, you've said AI drift can sometimes be more dangerous than hallucinations. Why is that, and how can organizations prevent systems from slowly moving away from their original intent?
So, my experience is hallucinations have become very, well known, well written about. What drift, and how I define drift is, you've asked AI to do something, it says it has done it, but it's incomplete, or it is slightly drifted in a different direction, although that direction is accurate and complete. It's not it doesn't align to the intent. So if I kind of build upon what EJ and Alex talked about, traditional software development has been trustworthy for a long time, for a handful of reasons. Someone built the code, reviewed the code, build was reproducible, commits are signed, decisions are written down, tests are run the same way. If a change occurs, change management process catches it if there's any issues. However, in agentic world, you have a whole different dynamic happening. Agentic systems cannot be assured of validating output alone. Quality engineering then needs to adjust to evaluate the mission, which is the intent. And that's where the intent is really important to ensure that drift hasn't occurred away from the original intent. Context, grounding, memory, plans, trajectories, model behavior, the tools, which tools you're using, observability as well here, what EJ was talking about, but which tools are you using from an agentic perspective and how they behave? Permissions, refusals, recovery, and consequences. All of that has to be taken into account at the beginning. So shift left testing is critical with agentic, because all of these things have to be defined very clearly so that your testing process and your entire your SDLC process now works with that within those parameters, and that's how it transforms to ADLC. Code review becomes adversarial, and persona review, domain-specific personas must be established for architecture, security, legal, accessibility, and more. And I can talk about it in more detail than EJ can as an independent consultant, and working with a consulting firm that would like to help people do all of these things, which we built tools to do. Each artifact has to be embedded and set up under its own rubric. Change control becomes a AQA class orchestration. Guardian agents are set up to run deterministic pre-checks, sequence personas for artifact class, and enforce hard fail gates before class level verdicts land. Reproducible builds become hash anchored bindings, and so that it is traceable back from a legal perspective, that you can, with hash, because so that somebody can't change it or inject something, or the agent itself, if it's running in autonomous mode, can't automatically change something. Okay, signed commits become deterministic invariant enforcement, and decision records become standard binding intent. So these are technical details that have to be embedded into the agent up front, and it depends on what you're doing with the agent. So if you take agents and you build a kind of a hierarchy of it, you can have assist agents, which are co-pilots, recommend agents that do recommendation, human decision. So humans are in the loop. They act with approval, act within certain bounds, so those are set. And then you have the autonomous agent, which most companies haven't gotten to that point yet, which run completely independent. So all of the things that I've talked about at a very technical detail become absolutely critical the higher you go up the autonomy chain of building an agent from co-pilots to autonomous agents themselves.
I'm actually going to bring in a question from the audience. It's a good one for what we've been discussing so far. The question is, do you have any general advice for what to include in an AI policy for software development? This particular audience member says that at their organization, they don't allow AI. So maybe from that vantage point, Alex, do you have any tips on what should be included in the policy?
Yeah, I will start with another statement before. I don't think trying to restrict usage of AI is, I will call it, the best idea today, because if they don't do it officially, they will do it unofficially, and that's going to be even worse. From a policy perspective, from my point of view, it goes down to having a trusted framework that you need to put in place, and to also look at the use case. I will call it the use cases. The idea of the policy is not to necessarily restrict or control what the people will, not necessarily what the people will do with it. It's more to put guidelines around how they will use it and educate them around I will call it the risk. So there is the same thing with cybersecurity. For me, is the same thing with AI, and especially these Gen AI tool that you can use for vibe coding or rest. If you don't educate your people, you don't teach them how to prompt, you don't make them knowledgeable so they understand that their role has changed within the ecosystem. This is where, in my opinion, the biggest risk comes. And if your policy is aligned as more a stick than a carrot, then you will end up with, I will call it, bad behavior within the organization. That's my point of view on it. I don't know if EJ at BMO has a different point of view, but
I would say I agree with you and adding on to that, responding directly to the question. I don't care what industry or sector that the questioner comes from. I believe as we sit here in August of 2026, that to me, I find very strange that that an organization would take a no AI approach. If we were having this conversation in March of 2023, I would understand more. And I come at that answer from the perspective of there's enough documented evidence of approaches in terms of safety, security, responsibility, benefits, tooling, and skills, so that if an organization strategically chose to do so, it could effectively check all of those boxes to move forward and proceed in a way safely, securely, responsibly, and with value. So at this point in time, a no AI approach to me would strongly suggest a different type of conversation. But those tangible next steps, building upon what Alexandra said, should include things like, understanding your risk framework, understanding your enterprise architecture, your capability model, and making some select choices, what I would deem to be no regrets choices. You're not going to start with your hardest, most complex use cases, okay? But there is so much evidence out there that well beyond that, even for lower level tasks related to software development, the approaches are there, they're proven, the benefits are there, and candidly, things are moving so fast that the longer any given organization delays to move up that adoption, commercialization, and benefits curve, they're likely going to be a laggard vis-a-vis their competition. So I would say responsibly approach it. Don't wait until yesterday. Today is even too late.
How about you, Hassan? Is there anything else that you would add to the advice on what to include in policy for software development?
I think EJ and Alex covered the policy framework level. I'll give a little bit more of a practical example. The simplest thing you can start with is if you're using GitHub or GitLab, use Copilot. Get your software engineers to start to build their test plans as they're doing coding, where AI can assist with the test plan development. These are little baby steps to get the team comfortable, get them going, and it won't create the issue, the risk problem that maybe your leadership is concerned about, because it's contained. It's very, very contained. So it's kind of what I defined as the level one component. Writing emails with it, those type of things. What that does is it just starts to build this comfort level within the organization on the use of AI, and then that will then open up more doors for broader use. And as the organization gets comfortable and starts to build the policies, build their frameworks, and establish privacy rules around it, enhance those privacy rules that they already have with AI, and any regulatory controls that are coming down. You can also map your AI testing to regulatory controls, and there's a methodology to do that. That will increase the confidence level. So those are a couple of tips that anybody can use within their organization.
Okay, some great advice there. Turning to, you all touched on the importance of redesigning processes for AI. Alexandra, you said that organizations can't simply layer AI onto broken processes. How should that redesign actually look then in practice?
In my book, the first thing that they need to do is revisit, or we call that reimagine your processes at our place, but it's really figuring out a way to switch from output to outcome. They need to rethink the way they're considering their process, figuring out where AI will come and generate that prep work. Because even if you bring human in the loop, where AI is going to be different is you will use, for example, the AI to prep everything. So, for example, you have, I don't know, just an IT ticketing system. If AI is able to bring you the right context with the right information and understand the intent, and then it will make your execution much faster. So it's not simply about, oh, I'm putting in a chatbot that can do it. Is I need to revisit and reimagine, okay, what type of output do I need in order to achieve my outcome? And from there, making sure that at the end, it's outcome driven. And so when it goes even, I'm going to push it further, when it goes even to the development, when you look at agile methodology, where people will talk about stories, they will talk about epics, they will talk about the features that they want to create, they need to be an important element. We call that the hills, which is basically what is the outcome that you're trying to do? What is your objective? And from there, when you remap your backlog to achieve that, you will map it according to achieving that objectives. So that's really the biggest thing, because if you simply, I will call it, use AI to redesign the work and only taking what you do and try to make it faster, as I said earlier, you will just hit a wall faster. That's what's going to happen. So that concept of switching from output to outcome is absolutely crucial in the redesign of the process.
Okay, so we're going to try not to hit that wall. I'm going to turn to another audience question. This one is directed to EJ. How is the AI enhanced SDLC improving the way we modernize legacy solutions? Specifically, are there distinctive practices or experiences at BMO that can help manage the life cycle of platforms built from a mix of longstanding systems and new technologies? What do you think about that, EJ?
So two things. One, and it will lead into the answer to that question. I cannot emphasize enough the points that Alexander just made around the absolute necessity, if you are believing in your mind that you can, vibe your way to a resilient, scalable process that, is fit for purpose for an enterprise, that is going to end in what I would just politely call suboptimal outcomes. The rigor, around that process re-engineering, process engineering, combined with AI engineering and customer first design thinking, all of those things must come together if you're working backwards from outcomes and outputs in production at scale, especially if you want to delight, retain, and have great relationships with your customers. Now, that also relates to organizations, perhaps banks, others, that are sitting on a range of both what we'll generally call modern and legacy tech. And that world of transition is a hard one. There's no, easy day on this, but there are increasingly a range of tools. And I'm going to take us way back in time, in terms of mainframe and some legacy code that's probably sitting in a lot of different, basements, or around Toronto and like other places. There are now a range of tools and models that really help pull forward and transition some of those legacy platforms and the necessary skills, benchmarked and evaluated and fit for purpose into newer, more advanced systems, language, et cetera. And you can look out there. There's plenty of them. I'm not going to, cite specific vendors, but there's a lot of tooling out there. Now, all of that also presupposes the rigor and the discipline around enterprise architecture and defining very specifically that from and that to, that transition pathway, how you're going to get there, done at pace, at scale, and using all that AI capabilities and toolings that you can, again, in the context of a legacy mainframe to a next generation architecture. All of those things are there, but it's complicated. It's not something you're going to vibe your way out of, and it's going to require grit, dedication, time, and a lot of process engineering and change management to do that. Not all of us have the luxury of starting from scratch with pure play AI-enabled architecture, so that is kind of a necessary kind of byproduct of working in older legacy organizations.
Thank you for that. Hassan,
Can I add something?
Please do jump in. Yes.
When we're talking about modernization, I mean, I'm going through that example right now with one of my clients who I'm going to call it large public sector, has a big technology debt because they, for some reason, stopped investing for like 10, 15 years. There is a big challenge that they have around information and context. The knowledge around their processes has left the company. They're stuck with products and tools that they execute, they work, but they have no idea why it's working. So it's very hard to try to modernize something that you don't understand. And this is where technology like process mining, task mining, the approaching it from, I will call it test driven. You take the test results and you ingest that into the AI. That's new ways you could actually augment your knowledge around your own business. Because if you try to simply apply it, okay, let me vibe code this and I will make it better. I see that on, I see that on Facebook on a daily basis on a cloud type community where people reinvent the wheel and they believe they reinvent warehousing and they reinvent things doing. So you need that information and context. So you need to get as much information as you can, and you need to figure out ways to, number one, start documenting what you have, extracting the knowledge, reading the code. Don't get him to modernize right away. You need to document so you can then take a step back and say, okay, how would I modernize this after, once I know all that context? And that's in my opinion, that's crucial. If you don't do that, you're just going to waste your time.
You're almost like setting a budget.
Yep. You're setting about setting the approach.
Just to add to that, what Alex and EJ were talking about, enterprise architecture has to evolve. Intent in agentic becomes critical. And enterprise architecture is positioned to understand intent. It always, a new business changes, major changes, all flow through enterprise architecture. Enterprise architecture has to capture intent. It has to also dig up the original intent in those legacy systems, as Alex was talking about. That intent, and EA can use agentic to help them build a library of intent and keep it up to date. Whereas in the past, it would become stale. Because of the process and the length of time it takes to build new architectures, conceptual and logical, etc. But now with agentic, they keep it up to date, and that intent then in software delivery needs to turn into SDDs, which is spec-driven development. So once intent is turned into specifications, then it flows through the software development process with more clarity. It's that now, and with SDD process, you can also build constitutions, you can build planning modules and all that type of stuff to put guardrails around how you do agentic based build using spec driven development, and then that can flow into your testing processes, etc. And then at the end, which EJ was talking about, is you then build your service graphs, and you build agentic capabilities in operations to manage against the intent and against the specifications. So that's how you can kind of at a very high level modernize your entire end-to-end process from enterprise architecture through software development into operations, which I label now intelligent operations, which is agentic driven. So that's where I think we will evolve to and get to as the agentic transformation or revolution starts to really take fold, as we continue to proceed forward.
Okay, so definitely something in evolution to keep an eye on. There's been a hot debate around whether AI models should be open source. It's been a hot debate in Silicon Valley and Washington recently, especially as there's been growing interest in open Chinese models that are cheaper. Hassan, what AI tools are Canadian firms using? Do you think there are any trade-offs to using, cheaper open weight models that may not be as capable as frontier ones?
What we did at when I was at TELUS is we said we're going to take.
Oh, the debate was too hot, perhaps.
Yeah, I think we just lost a sound.
Yeah, EJ, can I get you to jump in on there? Where do
Sure.
you stand on, the use of open source versus open weight models?
Sure. I apply a very simple first principle to this complex question. Models come and go, contextual evals are forever. At the end of the day, like, you have a given task or service or outcome that you are trying to deliver. And as we talked about in the beginning, the range of observability around how to do that safely, effectively, and an optimized basis should inform your decision around model and tooling selection. There is no lack of models in the market. There are no lack of tools on the market. And in some cases, there may be what I'll call an overlay, in terms of privacy and legal, et cetera, et cetera. But the starting point for this needs to be not about the model. The starting point must be, what is your intended outcome? The contextual evals that allow you to demonstrably prove you've got a fit for purpose solution. And then through your model lifecycle management process, you go through the range of selection and testing to ensure that you're choosing that. I also feel my last point on this, there's going to be an evolution. This is my personal opinion, that frontier models may be interesting for certain types of frontier tasks, but I think increasingly, why are we all necessarily paying for things in those models that we don't necessarily have visibility, control, or optimized outcomes against? So I do think here that there's a rising thematic around purpose-built, trained, smaller language models, because the barriers to entry to building models are now coming down in terms of training. So I think you're going to see a counterpoint here in terms of task-specific small language models that are optimized, again, for those given evals.
That's really interesting. Alex, what about you in terms of the tools that you're seeing your clients using? What AI tools are Canadian firms selecting? Do you see any trade-offs when it comes to using open source or not open source models?
I will say in my world, it's more using the right model for the right use case. And I'm just going to make a joke here. We're an IBM sponsored panel, so for sure Watson comes into play. But joke aside, I mean, it's really around that. When you architect yourself, as AG said, models will come and go. If you look at benchmarking of AI models, if you look at them on a weekly basis, what was good yesterday is no longer good today and could come back tomorrow. And then you have the large guys that are coming. For me, model selection will come by the use case. What are you trying to achieve? What is the intent? And you need to test basically the models within your approach, and you need to have a way to easily unboat and reboot the models that are part of your application, because your use case may evolve over time. When you're starting to test, you may find additional variables, you may find additional elements that will make the decision of the model varies, and you will find out that at some point, one may actually not drift, but one may hallucinate. One may not have all the right context. So it's very, very important to have this. And I strongly believe, personally, in the open source. I'm not saying that we need to only use open source. I mean, in my opinion, needs to be a balance, because open source is great, but on the other side, open source is not going to wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning to fix bugs and issues, and you cannot necessarily rely on a guy in his basement on a Saturday night to fix production issues. So if you're using open source, you need to have that balance that it cannot be your first and last level of support. So you need to have people that will come and support it, but definitely around these models. And also to echo what EJ was saying, what I see more and more is these small language model coming into play, specialized for certain tasks, because it's kind of useless to have a model that understands how to do mathematics when you're looking at the legal issue or having something different. So there is skills that are not relevant. And when you drag all that, not only you have not only you may have a chance that I will call it, gives you the wrong answer, or it's less relevant. It's also going to cost you much more to run these models because these tokens are more expensive. So that's how I see the model.
Hassan,
April, I
welcome
apologize.
back.
Yeah.
Welcome back. Did you want to finish your thought from earlier?
Yeah, sure. And I apologize to everybody. I'm in Italy right now in a small place, and so I don't have very good internet, and my power just went out. So I'm back on my phone. Yeah, so I was saying that we said we would use anything and everything, but we had to build guardrails around it. So we had to build our own privacy component, our own guards, a guard around it, built SSO around it. And then we ensured that through the AI office, every single use case was vetted and they were directed to use the right AI tool for purpose. So I think that's what EJ and Alex were talking about while I was trying to reconnect here, is it has to be purpose driven. Certain AI models are really good for certain use cases, and now with the cost of tokens increasing significantly, I think, and this kind of goes back to your original question in the beginning, is what companies are finding is that the cost of AI or the savings that they thought they could get in reducing the workforce is coming back the other way through token usage. So you have to be very, very thoughtful about which AI models you use, how much you use them, and for what specific purpose they're used to manage, FinOps or AI FinOps going forward.
I'm glad you brought up the topic of costs. That's something that, we've heard this word token maxing a lot in stories. And Uber, for example, recently described how it exhausted an entire year's worth of its AI budget in just a few months. So there's been greater scrutiny about costs of AI. And I know that BMO has been hyper-focused on that. EJ, can you tell us about how BMO's been trying to evaluate whether AI investments are actually delivering on business value?
Sure. So the cost of delivery is one very important aspect of your overall kind of cost and your benefits. So I want to bridge the tokenomics piece into kind of the broader question of around ROI and how that informs prioritization. So first, I hate to be repetitive and consistent, but I'm going to be repetitive and consistent. In so choosing how you build up your fit for purpose solution, scalable architecture, a key and essential part of that is a model lifecycle and tooling process that defines what is contextually fit for purpose. And I'm going to say it again, models come and go, evals are forever. And when I say evals, it's not just about safety, it's also about performance and cost. So it's all of those things in terms of full spectrum observability. Now, I want to bridge that as a very important input into the broader piece around benefits and ROI. At BMO, like very many other organizations out there, large, small, and in between, I'm sure there is no lack of use cases and great and amazing ideas that people have to improve products and services and operations. We are not, like anyone else, lacking in use cases. However, as large as we are, we also have to make choices. Not everything can be done all at once and all at the same time. And there's a lot of reasons for that too, in terms of the maturity of, the processes, the, necessary risk management, as well as the fact that we have a finite amount of, people and talent that can do these things. So the calculus that we employ as an entry point to consideration, and we are very public about this, is that, we have a very specific strategic ambition and outcome expected around our ROE, our return on equity. That is something we are very visible and public on in terms of BMO's overall strategic outcome and how we're going to use digital first AI enabled use cases to get there. So our entry point, as an example, when we're considering a use case is, does it tangibly move the needle by at least 1 basis point of return on equity? And that's a very calculated, measurable, precise outcome that we can assign to a use case in terms of the value engineering from that. And if it meets or exceeds that hurdle, it will be given very specific consideration in terms of payback period and feasibility. If it doesn't meet that 1 basis point of ROE hurdle, we're really going to look very strongly in terms of whether or not it makes sense for us to do and focus on. But we are clinically focused on our return on equity as a demonstration of our kind of strategy. And that really is fueling and driving our AI prioritization selection process.
It's a really clear way of measuring it and tracking it for everybody. Hassan, how do you think the likes of OpenAI and Anthropic going public could affect companies' AI budgets?
Very good question. I think it will have a negative effect. If everybody in the audience, if you're familiar with Gartner and their value curve, I think we're still in the hype stage. And ultimately, when these companies go go public, they're going to be required to meet higher and higher financial goals quarter over quarter, and that will put significant pricing pressure on cost of tokens. Right now, they can keep the costs a little bit lower because they're private. When they go public, the pressure dynamics change. That will probably drive us into the valley of discontent, as Gartner likes to put it. And then ultimately everything will settle. And the settling we have talked about, which is very, very specific use cases where AI becomes a real enhancer, specific models that are tuned for outcomes, and then tokenomics or FinOps associated with AI will become a major player, so that the industry manages the cost, and then it becomes very specific driven use case based deployment of AI, where you're getting real value out of it at the right price point. So I think what I see going forward is that there will be an increase in cost of AI usage of tokens, and therefore, every organization is going to have to be very, very thoughtful. And the mass deployments, as the case you talked about at Uber, that's going to come to a stop.
Okay, a massive challenge ahead. Mm-hmm. Another challenge that we've touched on earlier in this conversation, Alexandra, you've said that organizations underestimate how employees will adapt to AI. What are leaders missing?
I think, and it's interesting. I went in Montreal to a summit around AI, and they were talking about the skills of the future. And I was extremely surprised when I did not see delegation part of the skills that employees are lacking to properly use AI. When you look at could be vibe coding, could be a ChatGPT, could be a Gemini, doesn't matter. You're in your web browser. When you ask the question, as I said earlier, the AI will know the how to do it, so it has the knowledge. It just doesn't understand the context. And it's the same thing as delegating to an employee. If you don't give the right context to the right people at the right time, you're not going to get proper answer, and you're not going to get everything. So that for me is the big skills that a lot of people are lacking. And I even experimented with my own team when we deployed tools that are AI related. You will give it to 3 people, you're going to get 3 different results sometimes. Because why? Because they don't understand the full context of why they're asking the question. So they give partial information, and then they get an answer from AI that sounds plausible, and they run with it. But then they realize, oh, I forgot about this, I forgot about that, I forgot about that. And for me, the best way I describe it to people is when you deal with AI, think about that you have somebody that you can chat with just by mail, by sending him an envelope. He's somewhere in Asia when you're in North America. And the only way he can return back is replying with a message. So when you send that message, you need to make sure that you give the right context. And this is what delegation is about. When a manager delegates, it knows. But this is not something that I will call it developers or normal employees are necessarily used to. So they have challenge. So that's where the challenge comes from. And this is where, in my mind, the skill gap is from a leadership perspective, not trying to teach how to delegate to the employees.
If I can
Okay.
add to that, April, prompt engineering is really going to be a skill. And to Alex's point, delegation, because how you write the prompt is how you ultimately do the delegation. And writing a well thought out prompt is critical to get the right result back. Otherwise, you have that drift problem. And Alex kind of alluded to it. So I see that skill becoming absolutely critical, and design thinking, because AI can write the code for you, but how it's designed and what you need to see in the design to ensure that it's complete, a human has to provide oversight on it. Otherwise, it will drift constantly, because it'll think it's a complete design when it's not, because it can't really do a thorough design. It can just write the code for you.
I'm going to bring in a audience question here for EJ. How and where should we keep humans in the loop when it comes to AI and software development?
That's a really great question. And the answer is, I don't think we know that fully yet. Okay, I think we have some hypotheses. I think we have some claims in terms of target state. But I would say where we are right now, like in terms of if you were to ask me to operational process today in August of 2026, I'm of the opinion that of today, a human in the loop remains essential when it comes to a range of things regarding, especially let's focus on software developed for a moment, okay, in terms of testing, in terms of, interaction with business partners. Because again, the question was, do we even need a human in the loop? And I'm going to say, not just for testing, understanding requirements, fit for purpose evaluations. So the nature and the types of tasks that I would allow AI to do today, back to Alexander and Hassan's point, are still going to be human-led. Okay, the art and the science of getting as much value out of these agents, the models and tools, to do basically human augmented AI SDLC versus pure play full autonomy, especially in a regulated environment. So to me, right now, right here, the human in the loop is everywhere. Why? Because if I'm talking about a production grade application, yes, I may be comfortable having those humans use AI tooling, GitHub Copilot, you name it. There's a range of tooling out there, but I'm not removing the human from the process. Versus an interesting potential future is that piece of the software development can be fully moved over to autonomous delivery. I still believe there's going to be some humans there in terms of hybrid teams managing both humans and agents. But right now, right here, human in the loop everywhere, where AI is enabling human software developing, not where we're having like fully autonomous development. I don't think we're there yet. Others may disagree with that. That's fine. That's not what I would be putting in a regulated, kind of service.
Okay, so humans need to be everywhere in the loop. So we have to leave it there. That's a good note to end it on. Thank you so much, Alexandra, EJ, and Hassan. And on behalf of the Global Mail, I would like to thank you all for joining us today and sharing such valuable insights with our audience. I'd like to thank all of our virtual audience for tuning in. We'll be sending out a event link to the webcast recording in about 1 week, so look out for that in your inboxes. And you'll see a QR code on your screen linking to a brief survey. We'd love if you could take a minute to fill it out so we can continue to improve our Globe and Mail events. Let us know what topic you want to learn more about next time. Thank you, everyone, and enjoy your day.